elementary school, my best friend was Carrie, as a lot of you guys know. She had a little brother who was about 4 years younger than us named Matt. When he was 7, he was diagnosed with ADHD, and he was immediately put on Ritalin for his form of treatment. And a couple of years ago, I got in contact with Carrie, and she was so happy because Matt was coming off of his medicine. He was coming off to see if he had outgrown it and if he was going to be able to go into adulthood without being on medication for it. And then a few weeks later, I got another phone call from her, except it wasn't so happy. Matt had tried to hang himself, and doctors believed it was because of the addiction that he had formed on the Ritalin. And upon further reassessment, they discovered that he didn't really have ADHD, that he was acting out for attention because he had an absent father who was constantly gone on military deployments, and that because he didn't have the ADHD, the medicine had nothing to fix, so it created its own problems, which was the depression, which ultimately led to his attempted suicide. And so what happened to Matt is something that should not happen, and is something that would be almost every parent's nightmare. And that's why I'm here to talk to you today about why you should not accept the diagnosis of ADHD in your child, and if you do, make sure you are 100% sure that that's what they have before you put them on medication as treatment. And in order to do this, we're first going to talk about what ADHD is, what causes it, and how it's commonly treated, and what the problems are with those treatments. And then we're going to discuss in detail why you should not accept the treatment, or the diagnosis, of ADHD. So let's start with the basics of ADHD, which is short for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Health, they break the symptoms down into 3 different areas: inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. Inattention is the inability to follow directions, and they seem like they're not listening, and they avoid tasks that require time and effort. Hyperactivity is the fidgeting, moving constantly, and talking excessively. And impulsivity is characterized by actions such as inability to wait one's turn and interrupting. The cause of ADHD is actually not definite. A lot of researchers that I've read say that there is some form of a brain, like a chemical imbalance, or that something that can be seen on a CAT scan, such as brain waves, but they can't really define it any better than that, so there's not really a definite cause. Medicine is the most common form of treatment, with over 90% of the children that are diagnosed with ADHD being put on pharmaceuticals such as Ritalin and Adderall. And according to Dr. Peter Breggins, author of Talking Back to Ritalin, in 1990, 900,000 kids were on Ritalin or Adderall, and today there are 4 to 5 million. So we're in an era of what they call is the Ritalin epidemic. And there are a lot of dangerous side effects that are associated with Ritalin, and they are that they're very addictive, as you can see in Matt's case. They cause fast sporadic heartbeats, fever and skin rashes, headaches, high blood pressure, stomach pain and nausea, loss of appetite, vision impairments, dizziness, rapid mood changes, insomnia, depression, and zombie-like states while on the medication. And if the side effects aren't scary enough, you can look at the group of drugs that they're associated with. Ritalin and Adderall are stimulants, and they're more specifically amphetamines, which is in the same category as cocaine and speed, both of which are known for their high that they give their users. And so obviously there's a lot of issues with the treatment of ADHD, but there's even more issues with the trouble with labeling your child with ADHD. And because if you label your child with ADHD, or any label for that matter, then it gives them an excuse to not accept responsibility for their actions. On numerous occasions, Matt would say that he had broken a lamp, or he had gotten in a fight at school, or he had done something, and we would tell him he was going to be in a lot of trouble, but he said, "It's okay, I already told Mom I didn't take my medicine," even though he had. He knew exactly how to lie with his medicine to get out of trouble and not take responsibility for what he had done. ADHD is often overdiagnosed and misdiagnosed. Sorry, a little late. And research in the past 5 years has actually found that many of those kids diagnosed with ADHD actually have Tourette syndrome, mood disorders such as bipolar disorder, nutrition deficiencies, severe allergies, or lead exposure. But these other possibilities are hardly ever explored because they require further testing, and ADHD is just a simple label they can slap on them and give them a prescription for. Environmental influences are often ignored by doctors also, such as acting out for attention because they live in broken homes, they have absent parents, or they're dealing with stress such as bullies at school. Parenting is also ignored. If you have an inconsistent or absent parenting style, of course the child's going to start acting out when they go to school because they're suddenly having to deal with rules that they never had to deal with before. So it characterizes itself much like ADHD does. But these symptoms, or these environmental influences, are ignored because then society would have to admit that there are broken homes in America, and that's something we don't want to admit to ourselves. The diagnosis of ADHD and the prescription of Ritalin is a growing epidemic in the United States. And when doctors believe or tell parents that they think their child has it, it's usually not argued against, and medication is accepted on the spot. But we as parents need to realize that this could be more harmful to our child than good. And as parents, parents need to realize that they're completely capable of denying that their child has ADHD, demanding a second opinion, demanding further tests to rule out other possibilities, and refusing to accept drugs as a treatment. Don't be afraid to be your child's voice. And I encourage you to spread the word to friends and family if you hear that their child is being tested for ADHD or is being put on medication for it, so they know there are other options out there and there are other possibilities that it might be. And as parents become more informed and active against this, laws will be created to prevent misuse of drugs and further slow the Ritalin epidemic. Thank you.
Did you get me?
Mm-hmm.